this post, I'm going to cover the next two sections of the authentic listening map. That is, checking out understanding, and finally asking questions. So when the speaker is completed, and as in the last post we said, you check for that completion, the next step is to check your understanding. In other words, feeding back what you heard. Now, it's a very interesting concept here. You can never say what somebody said. You can only say what you heard. One of the things I tell my clients, if you want to kind of minimize the possibility for conversational hurricanes, never ever say you said. Always say, I heard you say this. Now you're speaking for yourself. You're not accusing them of saying something, because many times you never faithfully give back what they said. Many times you give back the interpretations of what they said. So, with that, let's kind of look at the dynamic of this whole issue of listening. So, if you take this particular kind of slide here, you have a person listening, being one, they're listening through their filter, and then as a result of what they heard and what they interpreted, they speak. And as they speak, there is a process called hearing, which is a biological process. In other words, the sound waves are impacting the eardrum, but immediately upon impacting the eardrum, it goes through the filter of the listener. Now, that filter has many, let's say, different names for it. Some call it mental models, some call it the structure of our interpretation, how we see the world, our automatic listening, our mindset. There are a lot of different names for it, but literally it is a filter, and that is what the other person hears. And if you're lucky, what they hear is what you said. So you said black, they hear black. And when they reflect that back, when they check out their understanding, and you hear that they actually heard you, all you have to do is say yes. Sometimes you said black and they heard gray. And when they check that out, that means they got part of what you said, but not all of what you said. So then what you do there is you essentially correct what they're missing. Sometimes you say black and they heard red, just the opposite. And you'll never know that unless they give that feedback to you, and then you can take corrective action by explaining what you meant to say or how you meant it to be interpreted, and you're still then in the conversational dialogue between speaking and listening. Once the person reflects back exactly what you said, and you say that that's what you said, all right? In other words, they're listening and you're speaking are now congruent. You're done really with this part of the listening map, and if there's any final questions that you might have for clarification, then now's the time to ask them. If you do this process right, to a large extent, there's very little need for questions. But sometimes you might say, look, I see what you're concerned about, I see your facts, I see your interpretation, but I'm not really sure how you feel about it. I didn't really get your true feelings about that. That would be asking a question, and then that would allow them then to kind of reflect on their feelings and respond to that. Or you might say, you know, I got everything, except I'm not exactly sure what you want from the situation, what you want to accomplish, what outcomes you want to create. And that's another aspect that you might ask questions on, and they would then respond, and you can reflect back on what you heard. But eventually, when this process ends, there should be no questions left. That you completely understand the other person from their perspective. So that is essentially the completion of the listening map and the listening, say, stages, not exactly steps, but let's say stages of that listening map. The next post, we're going to begin to look at how we put the speaking and the listening together to really resolve issues and to do conflict resolution, or issue resolution may be a better way to say it. I say this, that people can have legitimate differences of opinion and they can be resolved very cleanly, and if they're done properly, if it's done properly, you literally don't have any emotional content to it. So conflict from that perspective should never really occur. Having a difference of opinion and resolving it should have the same emotional content as pouring a cup of coffee in the morning. It's when you don't resolve these conflicts very well, when you don't actually have authentic speaking and listening, that these issues become confrontational and they show up as conflict. So that'll be the next set of posts where we'll begin to look at how do you use the listening and the speaking in a powerful way to resolve issues on a win-win basis.